Good morning, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. I know it's the last full session of the day. I like to think they're saving the best for last, so congratulations on your choice to join us. I know that we're not all trapped here. It's fine. We're all here voluntarily. My name is John McSweeney. I'm a project coordinator for UITP working on CCAM topics. This is the session, Automated Mobility, a key tool to achieve EU objectives to 2030 and beyond. For those who don't know us at UITP, we're the International Association for Public Transport. We have about 1,900 members from 90 countries, the only global network bringing together all forms of sustainable transport modes and all public transport stakeholders. We're 140 years old this year. So we've been doing this for a while, how to use technology to deliver better transport services to people, deliver better results for society. On CCAM in particular, we have an automated mobility working group bringing together our members who are public transport authorities, operators, OEMs, service providers. We're also involved representing the PT sector in initiatives like the CCAM partnership, but also in European projects. You'll have seen, I hope, the ULTIMO booth downstairs. You'll have seen the Navia shuttles that are being demonstrated outside. We're very happy to be part of the ULTIMO project. We're also involved in AI for CCAM, FAME, the reskilling project, all of which are downstairs. And we were previously the coordinator for the SHOW project, which I think has been mentioned a few times in these past days. So, unsurprisingly, we're going to take a public transport focus today. We're going to hear from practitioners, people who have been involved in deploying automated mobility services. We heard from Andrea Di Candido yesterday talking about the large-scale demonstration project in the future, that we should be focused on the services that we are deploying, maybe less so on the technology that is being deployed. So we're going to hear about how automated mobility can enhance, can enable, can potentially transform public transport, what it means overall for mobility in our cities, but also what it means in terms of security for vulnerable road users, for societal acceptance. We've got 4 great speakers lined up. I'll introduce those shortly. Checking if this works. That's me. I'm also happy to share the moderation role with Emily Bloutier, who many of you have already met. Emily's corporate project manager at Navia. She and her team have done fantastic work putting on the shuttle demonstration outside. The format is we'll have 4 presentations, give or take 30 minutes overall. We'll try to allow an hour for some good discussion. I've got some questions lined up. We'll, of course, open the floor to you as well. We'll keep those questions for the discussion bit. If you see something in the presentations that you want to come back to, take a note. We'll pick it up during the discussion. I think that's it. That's enough from me. Thank you very much again. I'll give the floor first to Endre Angelvik. Endre is Executive Vice President for Radical Innovation at Ruter, which is the public transport authority in the Oslo region. As you can expect from that kind of job title, Endre is, he calls himself a technology optimist. After a career as a co-founder of a startup, working in technology development and innovation, he's now bringing new opportunities to the market with Ruter. And he's going to talk to us a bit about his vision for a better city built on autonomous mobility. Endre, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And also, thank you guys for sticking around. And I totally agree, the best part is at last, towards the end. As the session description says, all of Europe's serious challenges around climate and sustainability goals, decreasing mobility poverty, in the end, decreasing car usage, air pollution, all of that good stuff, we know it fairly well. It's been on the agenda for quite some time. And I think it's important to understand that to achieve those goals, there's one key thing that needs to happen. We need to have less kilometers driven on roads. At the same time, we need to maintain the freedom of the individuals to lead the lives they want. And one of the things that the car was able to do was to connect those two things and has turned them into a synonymous thing. The car is the freedom that does that. That's the challenge we face. And to us, as the Public Transit Authority, Oslo as a city and as a region, they have goals and ambitions to reduce car traffic. And that's even in a country that's so electrified that we're like the biggest Tesla share of any country in the world if you do per person numbers. And all of our energy production is already hydroelectric, so we don't have much to do there either. And to sort of balance these two things out, we've set out our vision for the transportation system and for us to be to provide sustainable freedom of movement. And the balance is two key parts. It's the freedom of movement that we all want to live the lives we want, and we all want our children and grandchildren to have, to lead their lives. But we need to do that in a sustainable way. We cannot just grow and grow and grow the way we do today. So how do we achieve that, and where does AV come into play? Well, we, back in 2018-ish, did what we call the Oslo study. Some of you might have seen it or read it. It's very similar to some of the ITF studies on what happens if you replace all of the private cars, all of them, with a fleet of ride-sharing autonomous vehicles, or not ride-sharing, so to speak. We did the simulations on this, and we found some very, very, very interesting effects. We would be able to remove between 15 and 30% of the kilometers driven on the road network in our region. Between 15 and 30% reduction in kilometers driven, without any journeys disappearing, without anyone traveling any less than they already do. We also found that if we transform the system like that, the current around 700,000 vehicles could be reduced to a fleet of between 25 and 30,000, which is more than a 90% reduction in the vehicle fleet, with the implications that has for material usage, space usage, all of those good things that we all want. So that's the starting point for our vision connected to autonomous vehicles. And why do we keep saying autonomous in this? Well, for this to be operationally efficient and cost efficient, it needs to be autonomous. Theoretically, could you do it with drivers? Yes, but we're already short on drivers, so if we need more drivers, where are we going to find them? And second part of that, that's going to be on a cost level that doesn't fly at all. So we're really out to chase how can we get large scale, and I made some comments on large scale yesterday, but how can we create a service that can actually replace private car usage without diminishing people's ability to live the lives they want to? And we also found in the Oslo study, which kind of surprised us, how good of a service it would actually be. Because when we simulated, and this was a proper agent-based simulation, you can find it online, I'll be happy to talk to you guys about it afterwards if you want more details. Every other journey would start, and it's on demand, every other journey would start in 2 minutes or less from you said book in the app. How long time does it take you guys to walk from here to outside the gate, including the checkout? More than 2 minutes. This would be an insanely good service. It would almost be too good. You couldn't design it to be that good because it wouldn't practically work. But it just shows the potential of actually deliver an excellent service to the customer in doing this as well, maintaining their freedom and flexibility. We also looked at the detour. What's the hassle of riding with others? And again, we found that more than half of the journeys would have 4 minutes or less detour. 4 minutes is about the variation you can find in normal traffic on a journey that's about 20-25 minutes long, which is the average. And if you guys notice a 4-minute difference on your car journey or other transportation journey, good for you. You're keeping good time and you're being very accurate and precise. So basically what it shows us is that this is very viable, can be a very good service. It's actually realistic to create the service, deliver what we need for the citizens to maintain their freedom. And by making it shared, we can bring down the kilometers driven and deliver on all of the other good stuff. Those are the key components to that vision. And we've been chasing that now for at least the last 5 years and then some. And we've been looking for where can we find the technology to deploy. And to repeat myself from yesterday, if anyone has a couple of hundred vehicles that can do 80 kilometers an hour without a safety driver and open roads mixed traffic, let me know because I want them. Today, we can only see stuff like that basically 2 places in the world, either wherever Waymo operates in the US or in China where the Chinese operators are. They're the only ones that are close. And sad to say, been here 3 days listening to this, and from everything that we see in Europe, we don't see a European digital driver at this level. Now, I struggle to see anyone that's going to be able to, in Europe, deliver it over the next 5 to 10 years. So to me, that means that we have a massive job developing in Europe, which is what all the R&D and that stuff is all about. But at the same time, we actually need to get deployments going at a different kind of scale than any of the R&D stuff does. And to me, large scale is actually small. 100 vehicles would be the start. As I said, Oslo with a complete transformation would actually deploy between 25 and 30,000 vehicles if there was a complete transformation. If I start multiplying this by cities in Europe, I'm easily in the hundreds of thousands of vehicles, even if you don't do complete transformations, and even if you only do 20, 30 cities or so. You're still truly large scale. I think my minutes are up, so I'll leave you there with the vision and root for everybody that's working on doing parts and pieces in this. And as I said, if anyone has any kind of those vehicles or anything close to that, let me know. I'm interested. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. That's both a very clear vision and a very clear call for what's needed to enable it. I'm sure we're going to pick up quite a few of those points during the panel discussion, but first I'll give the floor to Clémentine Barbier, who is Head of Autonomous Mobility at Keolis. Clémentine's, well, first of all, Keolis, I'm sure most of you know, but just in case anybody doesn't, is a French transport company which is deploying public transport services around the world. Clémentine and her team are responsible for testing and deploying autonomous mobility projects, but also passenger assistance, remote and local operations, fleet management, technical coordination, and contributions to European and national projects. And because that's not enough, Clémentine is also very kindly a co-chair of UATP's Automated Mobility Working Group. Clémentine, I think you're going to talk to us about what you see as the way to enable, enhance, and maybe transform public transport.
Good morning to you all, and thanks, John, for the kind introduction. I think I will have to skip one slide presenting myself. I want to know what kind of audience we have here. I know the question has been asked during the intro session. Can you please raise your hand if you're working for regulation? Okay, a few of us, kind of. PTAs? Okay. AV and connected infrastructure OEMs? Research universities? Okay. And am I missing maybe road operators? And public transport operators? Okay. So I'm representing the public transport operators, and together with Keolis, we have an experience in deploying and operating public transport in a few countries, 8 countries. So we've tried a lot of different regulations as well, and we operate generally all these kinds of different mobility modes, so ranging from the trains, trams, metros, all the way to bike sharing, shuttles, like boat shuttles. So it's very interesting to integrate this all as a whole in a cocktail to provide mobility services for the public. And one thing that is interesting is that we have run 2 level 4 operations with Easy Miles shuttles. So we know a little bit what it's like to operate without absolutely no one on board. The question I am going to answer is how CCAM can enable, improve, or even transform public transport. And we will see one point for each. So first, I think that CCAM can enable public transport because it can widen the range of opportunities offered as public transport. We can offer service at several sites at the same time and optimize the costs of operations. If you only need one remote manager for example, 2 locations and a fleet of different vehicles running there, then you have an interesting business model. We can customize the service and offer door-to-door trips or first, last mile solutions. And this is provided by on-demand or demand-responsive transportation. And there are some options that might be explored, such as platooning, where you have 2 vehicles following each other really closely, and this can increase the number of the capacity of the vehicles. In order to match ridership, if there are during peak hours a lot of people that want to be transported, then it's better to adapt to the needs. And we are also looking into the conversion of former railway lines, both with road vehicles, or we are exploring a startup that whose name is Urban Loop. It's a French startup. It's a very, very light rail capsules, so far for 2 people, but they will go up to 10. And it's an interesting service and system that we are also exploring. And this is very interesting also from a remote management point of view, because there we have a demonstration site not too far away from Paris. It's open, the service is open to anyone until November. And we have seen that people are really doing things, since there is no one on board, that are quite surprising. For example, they are trying to hang from the bars or stuff like that. And I think this we need to take into account when designing the service, and also like what kind of information we give the passenger, like, don't do that, please, because it's for your safety. I think also CCAM can improve public transport to offer extended hours of service, and I think this is key for people to take public transport. Usually, one thing that is missing is how do you come back late at night, or how do you go to work when you're working off hours, and this is something that is important for people to have a solution that is really fitted for them. I think the slides are coming back. I have them here, so I will go on, and hopefully this comes back. CCAM can also enhance road safety in a way, and well, I think this is correct for EU regulatory processes. It's a bit different with China and US test and see frameworks. So usually they say everything is allowed unless we say, okay, stop. So I think in the EU we really have this conscious and care about safety. It's important to also reduce the number of single occupancy vehicles, so move people, not cars. This is the motto of ULTP, and I think this is really one of my fights daily. It is an opportunity to have also electrical vehicles running and not oil-powered vehicles. And one of the key is that we can integrate accessibility, especially for wheelchairs and people with disabilities, directly from the design of the vehicles and of the service, because since it is usually new services, we can integrate this into designing it. And we can focus on user experience and acceptability, and we have conducted a research with a PhD student from the US, but this was conducted in Sweden, in order to know whether people were willing to take the AVs and whether they were feeling safe. And I think one of the questions we also need to ask ourselves is whether they are feeling secure inside the vehicle once they are alone with strangers only inside the vehicle. And last but not least, I think that CCAM can transform public transport. We see that it induces a lot of workforce changes, and this is a concern with the reduction of the number of drivers available, driver shortage. I think this can offer them better work conditions. For example, they can work from an office and not inside the vehicles. And Keolis has conducted recently a study about what it's like being a driver, and they have so many tasks and things to do and mental load when you are driving a regular vehicle. Like, you have to give the money back, you have to focus on the safety of your vehicle, safety of the passengers. It's really a tough job, but very inspiring job as well. And so CCAM changes the way the jobs are designed, both for drivers and related activities, remote management and so on, and also for maintenance. I think my time is almost up. So we need to train people so that they know how to do this. And also we need a specific organization of the service. Thanks for your attention. I give the floor back to John.
Thanks, Clementine. I think the point as well on the security, the feeling of security for passengers is something we might touch on during the panel discussion again. I'll introduce now Dr. Thomas Novak, who is a graduate of the Vienna University of Technology, where he earned his PhD in 2008. He's been working in the field of ITS for more than 15 years, the last 10 years, I think, on connected and automated mobility. Since 2024, he's a research professor for Cooperative Connected Automated Mobility in Transport Logistics at the University of Applied Sciences, Upper Austria. Contributed to many national and European projects, international conferences, research papers and books. But he's going to talk to us now about the applications of CCAM technology to prioritize public transport in Vienna and some of the practical, I think, challenges and benefits that they've seen there. So, Thomas, thank you.
So, thank you very much for introducing me so nicely. I brought with me just one slide, which is the lesson learned from the last 2 days with the IT here. So I'm talking a little bit from the traffic infrastructure perspective, so that is what I'm doing quite a lot of time, as you heard during my introduction, because all the vehicles we are talking about are somehow driving on the road. And of course, there's a physical infrastructure. I will talk a little more about the digital infrastructure here. Public transport prioritisation, just to shortly introduce what I mean with this, that we have the same understanding. Most of you, I think, know this. It's about changing the traffic light schedule because a prioritized bus or a tram, whatever, is approaching an intersection. That's the key idea of it. Traditionally, you use technology from the 1980s, 90s with analog radio that is somehow using a proprietary protocol, and somehow this is then magic, and then the traffic light schedule changes. Who are a little bit familiar with CITS and all, and ETSI and standardization know, and also there's a booth downstairs from C-Roads, that this use case is more or less specified, harmonized, there are messages available, and so on. So maybe some of you may ask why he is presenting this topic, because everything is settled, so you have it done, it is specified, you have. So, and then it comes up to the three other fields I brought with me. Who are the stakeholders in this? And it is then very distributed, because on the one side you have the vehicle, let's call it, whatever it is. On the other side, you need somehow this CITS connectivity, which is most likely another supplier. I don't name here names, but you know who can do this. You have the traffic infrastructure operator, someone who is operating the traffic light, and you have, of course, suppliers in supplying this traffic light infrastructure, which is normally somehow a traffic light controller, what you call, and I think all of you know these traffic lights, red, yellow, green, perfectly harmonized throughout the world, so that's perfect fit. So you see there are some stakeholders in it with not always the same interest. So what are the key challenges here? Not to talking so much about the technical, but more on the organizational and how the processes are. So to prioritize this bus, you must change the traffic schedule in the traffic light controller. And these traffic light controllers have a lifetime of 25 years, up to 30 years, depending on when the change cycle happens. We know that municipalities are lacking of money, so it will last rather longer than shorter of 25 years. And I see here there are also people in my age, so 25 years, you remember what was the technology there, and digitalization? Not at all. So how to make these traffic light controllers, enable them that they really can provide this service? You may note these are simply digital inputs and so on. So therefore, you must make then CCAM ready, what we call this. And on the other side, they are also proprietary, because 25 years ago, everyone did his own stuff. All the companies are the same, so not to name just one did it wrong and the others did it right, so everyone did his own stuff. So even if you are willing, as a public authority, as a public transport operator, to change this, you must go back to the suppliers of these traffic light controllers or of the software around, and to agree with them that somehow this interface is open, not call it harmonized, standardized, whatever, simply open, that you can access this and that can you change the time schedule. And here we are again with the stakeholders and their interest. Why should such suppliers open this interface to everyone? Yeah. So that's a major challenge. And some countries do it like, I remember during my last job in the Netherlands, they somehow made a standardized approach that is used by all of the traffic lights in their country. the German, Austrian, Switzerland region, they have it's a different story here. But then become also to the point that is of course valid, why should I use CCAM for that? Because we have traditional topics, we have loops, yeah, we can we have analog radio, and there are sometimes simple explanation why to move. Like in Germany, they simply stop this bandwidth, yeah, with this frequency, want to use it for other stuff, and therefore they cannot no longer use this analog radio. So that's very simple, but sometimes this happens. And on the other side, more on a strategic level, we can say, and maybe most of you know, that the CITES or connected possibilities are multi-purpose technology. So you can not only use it for public transport, you can use it then also for your individual cars, this so-called global speed advisory. You can use it for then automated vehicles to really transmit in a safe way the status of the traffic light. Normally you use sensors, but the red, the yellow and the green. I had a project in former times. They said, okay, the red is clear and the yellow is clear and the green. But if you have a truck, then the red could also be the braking light and not the traffic light. So therefore, this communication can help also towards functional safety. We heard a lot that this is somehow top priority in Europe to become all this stuff functional safe. So this means if you sell this technology or this idea to the cities, public transports, you have this, I think that's the major issue, this multi-purpose, multi-use case technology, with the challenge that there are different stakeholders with different interests. And the message is, we heard it multiple times, yeah, they cooperate, of course, throughout the last years. And the last session I was in, then it's also about money. So who is paying and who has the benefit? And sometimes someone is paying and the other has the benefit. So that's also a key issue here. And then it's coming up to business models, but this was addressed in another session. So to summarize, it's I think an easy application everyone can understand. So it's not so complex like I was yesterday in the session with AI. That's such a huge topic. I was totally lost. So it's an easy application, and maybe the approach can be to start with easy understanding application and then to realize them, go into deployment and then to learn, instead of always improving technology for the same use case and nobody is really then deploying it because he's already waiting for, like in Android, for the next update. So that would be my key message to you. So like one of a major sports marks, just do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. I mean, you say it's an easy application. It doesn't sound like it's entirely straightforward either, though, but we can get into a bit more detail of that in a while. We're going to build up from that detail level to take a more systemic level now. I think we have Dr. Uwe Planck-Wiedenbeck, who's chair of Transport System Planning in the Faculty of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Bauhaus Universität Weimar. He's also coordinator of the European Digital Innovation Hub Thuringia, where they support public and private organizations in the region with their first steps into digital transformation, with a particular focus, I think, on mobility and logistics, as well as IT infrastructure and software. And Uwe, I think you'll speak to us about integration of CCAM into urban and regional public transport planning. So over to you.
Yeah. Thank you for that introduction, and I'm delighted to be able to be here on the conference and to be the last speaker, I think. It's a great honor for me. Yeah, my name is Uwe Planck-Wiedenbeck, and as you told, I have two roles. One role at university. We are working in the field of research on traffic safety, on mobility concepts, and on ITS. And the other role is that European Digital Innovation Hub, and I would like to tell something about that at the beginning. This network of ADs was founded by the European Commission 2 years ago. It is a part of that Digital Europe program, and our task is to support public administrations and small and medium companies in the field of digitization. And every AD in Europe has a specific topic. Our topic is mobility and logistics, but in total there are about 150 ADs in Europe. In Germany there are 17, and every AD has a specific topic. And every region in Europe should have one AD, European Digital Innovation Hub. From the next year, there will be a little shift from our tasks. In the next year, at the beginning of the next year, we should focus on artificial intelligence. And yesterday there was a presentation about that AI strategy. And for us, it is very interesting because we are dealing in our AD with autonomous driving because it's part of digitization, it's part of mobility. And with that contact, we will stay in contact with the new AI factories that are currently being created. And these are very large and powerful servers for high performance computing and big data. And all the companies who are dealing with these topics should become an access to that AI factories, and the ADs should bridge that. I think it's an interesting topic. Thuringia, I don't know if you know Thuringia. It's one of the states in Germany. It's a small state in the mid of Germany. And we are based in Weimar, one of the towns in Thuringia, with 70,000 inhabitants. And it is the city of Goethe, Schiller, Gropius, Cranach, Nietzsche, and many other famous people who lived in Weimar. Thuringia as total has about 2 million inhabitants, including one large city, that's the capital, Erfurt, with 200,000 inhabitants, some medium-sized cities, and many rural areas. And mobility plays in our state a very important role. And the quality of public transportation is very poor. And all surveys in Thuringia express dissatisfaction that the policy focuses too much on large cities and metropolitan regions, especially in the field of transportation. That means the people say, hey, we want more, better public transport. And also for our economy, for our companies, the poor supply of public transport is a disadvantage. Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's a disadvantage in the competition for staff, especially for skilled workers. And not everyone is able to come by car to work. Not everyone wants to do that. For example, younger people under 18. And driving is also increasingly perceived as too expensive. That means also our economy says we need a better mobility system in our country, in our region. Sorry. Yeah. The state of Thuringia has therefore launched a new strategy, a mobility initiative, and the centerpiece of which is the integral cycle timetable, which is gradually being implemented in all districts. This is an old concept. It comes from Switzerland. And the idea is to coordinate all the public transport lines on a better way, to have points where you can come from one line to another. And it's an optimization of our public transport system. The objectives of that concept have been agreed in our in all the counties and all the towns. The general planning is in place, and the first districts, the first counties are now ready for implementation. And autonomous driving fits in very well in that strategy, in that concept, because we need flexible services under the baseline, under the basic services of bus lines and trains. And for that, we have different central starting points, point-to-point services for accessing the area below the central bus and rail lines, and at times of low demand, in the evening, for example. Then these services are very important for the mobility management for the companies, for example. We have a lot of tourists in Thuringia, and also for touristic services, mobility becomes more and more important. And also here, some flexible systems are very, very helpful. And the next point is concepts for free-floating car sharing. We have one big project, the Move Well project, that is founded by our National Ministry for Research. And there we develop the concepts for the different flexible public transport concepts. We implement them and we will evaluate them. And these flexible systems, as part of the total mobility system in Thuringia, are for autonomous driving. And so we are ready for implementing autonomous driving. And he asked yesterday, he wants to buy 100, 200, 300 vehicles. I also would take 100 for Thuringia. But if we do that, we will do that. We have some points for implementation that are very important, I think. One is the technological benchmark that we need, and the other one is the cost structure. The technology benchmark, you know, in US, in Phoenix, in LA, in San Francisco, autonomous driving had the robotaxi service from Waymo available since last year, with over some 1,000 vehicles. And I was able to drive many kilometers in that vehicles, and I tested them, and I was very surprised about the level of service. The service is extremely safe. Driving is extremely confident in all relevant road areas, on roundabouts, on parking spaces, on the main roads. And my impression was autonomous driving is no longer a principal technological problem. Many things are solved, yeah. And so Waymo has, in my opinion, set the benchmark for safety, customer orientation, and availability, what means the number of vehicles. And providers of AD services must now orient themselves on this. Some words about the costs. Local public transport is extremely cost sensitive, especially in rural areas. The income from the sale of tickets only covers a small part of the costs, and the public transport companies need subsidies. Our financial situation is so that it's not possible to give them much more money. That means the main factors for the integration of autonomous driving in such concepts into public transport will be the costs of operation that the providers demand. And the core idea of autonomous driving was to reduce costs by saving on personnel. And in the medium and long term, this will only succeed through competition between different providers. And I hope some of the providers will come from Europe, maybe from Germany or other countries. And then we are able and willing to integrate autonomous driving vehicles into our public transport system. And we need it, we will it, and we are hopeful that it will be possible during the next 5 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for those great introductions. I'm going to pick up actually on what Uwe was just mentioning towards the end there about his experience in the US. And I want to go back to Andre and Clementine, because there was a good discussion about what this looks like kind of systemically, especially from the public transport operator point of view. But I like to think about, my parents are 70. And okay, there's very little public transport in my part of Ireland, but that's a whole other question. But for people who are going to use this, and the people who we really want to provide mobility solutions for, people who are older or younger, who have mobility issues, how are they going to experience these services? What's it going to feel like in maybe, let's say, 5 or 10 years when we have these vehicles on the road? What will it feel like in reality as a day-to-day thing? Clementine, do you want to start on that?
Sure. Well, my dream is that, like the metro, now you have automated metros that are quite around the road. My dream is that we take an automated bus just like we take a normal bus, and that people don't need to bother and ask themselves how to do and how to deal with the technology, because they won't need to deal with that.
Completely support that, but I'd even go as far as it being a natural service that you just use. It's there. When you, as I said, when you book it, it's a few minutes or whatever, you get picked up. You might share the ride if that fits. If you, for some reason, need an individual ride, it will provide you with that. It will be safe. The drivers that Waymo already have, the digital ones, love to deploy them here. They're currently the best in the world. Nobody in Europe, I've not seen anything here that compares at all. Still would love for that to happen. But it should be like picking up a phone or using any other technology that we're using. Most people don't travel every day because they want to be on a journey. They're traveling because they're going somewhere or doing something else. So most of the transportation that we do is just a utility. It's like power in the wall. You shouldn't be thinking about it unless it's not there. And in those cases, we should be good at dealing with that. So easy, seamless, natural, just work.
And if I may add, we already provide some lessons for people who don't know how to use public transport. For example, the elderly, we go to the places where they live, and we propose some courses on how to ride a bus. And also we propose that for the students at school. And I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do that also with AVs.
I think we have two very good examples. One is in Hamburg, Moja. It's a ride-sharing system, and it works, and the people are using it. Not all the people, but many. And on the other hand, in the US, it's an absolutely, the USA are a car society. And in Phoenix, in LA, in Stanford, and people always also use Waymo, and they use this service and they are satisfied. Not all the people, but many. And this example is very good. And I think in some years, if we have this high level of quality, high level of service, it is not anymore a problem of acceptance. Yeah. Oh.
If I could just piggyback on that, how many in the audience has actually ridden with Waymo? Raise your hand. Okay, less than, well, sorry, a couple here as well, but about 10. And when we've brought along people that has no tech background or isn't working even in transportation, and they tell us afterwards, wow, you could have never explained this to us. It is to such an extent as seeing is believing. So I think there's a lot of discussions in Europe that are going to change once we can expose more people to more of where the technology actually is. And if you guys ever get a chance to get in a Waymo and do a ride, and you haven't, go do it.
Okay, so seeing is believing is a great way to sum it up. We've been we spent quite a bit of time, I think, during the plenary sessions hearing about the need to speed up, to give people the chance to see and to believe. There's a big question coming up here, so I'm going to try and break it down a bit into a few sections so everybody can have a chance to address what they want. If we are leaving here with a mission to speed up the acceleration, going from what we heard about this, I think someone called it the pilot trap of everything stopping once the pilot finishes, moving soon to large-scale deployment, whatever that might mean in certain circumstances. I'd like to hear from those of you who've been involved in deploying tests and pilots, what you see as the path to achieving that, first of all. But then also, maybe for Uwe as well, and for Thomas, is at a systemic level, what does it look like when we get there? Where is the kind of tipping point in, like, how much CCAM do we need? How many of these vehicles do we need on the road to actually get to the level of the benefits that we talk about? And then what does it mean in terms of the traffic management and the integration? Because I assume at a certain point along this trajectory, we're going to have quite a big mix of types of vehicles, connected, automated, and not on the road, and how all that fits together. So it's a big question about how we get to the future and what it feels like systemically when we get there. So quite open. Who would like to jump in first?
Happy to start. Just starting off from the previous comment, a lot of this is actually seeing is believing. And one of our challenges is that we can't take half of Europe and ship to California to experience Waymo, to really understand where the tech is, so that all the discussions can get to that. So getting deployments in Europe where you can actually provide a sensible service where people would be paying for it and it would be operational as a normal part of the operation, that would, to me, be most definitely the next step. And that's why I'm looking for 100 to a 500 size fleet. It's big enough that is actually a fleet and you get scaling effects. It's big enough so that you can actually provide a sensible service to a big part of a population and they would be paying for it and you can have quality with it. It's not so big that it's going to completely disrupt or upend the transportation system as such. A couple of hundred vehicles in a European city isn't going to kill or not kill the traffic system. Might influence, but not entirely sure. And then we need to find our ways from there. And it's going to be different in different cities and locations. Not everybody's going to look for the Oslo transforming thinking. Others are going to deploy rurally or do other versions and variations of that. But I do think that getting to real services is the key. And to some of the discussions here, maybe we need to be able to work on two different things in parallel. One is the R&D and technology development that Europe needs to develop its own technology in this space, CCAM technology, AV stacks, and all of that. Fine, let's do that. The other part is taking the technology that's available in the world and actually deploying it to address the climate change, the driver shortage, congestion, and space issues. Maybe we need in Europe to separate these things apart, work in parallel, because if we can build the market for the European industry first, we can also help them understand what they should actually do. And right now, they're in no hurry to create a new market because they live too well in the one they have.
Yes, just to add one thing, I totally agree with what Andres shared. And I think we also need to not only scale up for scaling up, but getting kind of away from the subsidized projects. Because as long as we solely live on subsidy, then we are not able to provide a service on our own. And this is not a vision for the long term, and I think we need a vision for the long term. And this is also what our customers need. And my customers are both the PTAs and also the passenger. And the passenger, they need duration in the deployments and the this is what you say, John. When we are doing like a 6-month experiment, then people get used to using our vehicles, and then they stop having any service because we stopped the demo. And I think this is really like kind of killing what we are trying to do, because we want real service to come.
I want to bring the perspective a little bit from traffic management and also this user acceptance topic. We made some studies asking people who they trust the most, because acceptance is also very relating to trust. And most of the time the response was, we trust the most public authorities, road operators, so on highways, but also in cities. So that what comes then to my mind is, okay, if from a traffic management perspective, what I presented here, one example of many that you have in the city, and if it is easy or not, we can discuss further. If you somehow maybe give the passenger, the people, the feeling that the traffic management, and in Europe it's most of the time owned by public authorities, they are part of this game, and they are feeding this robotaxi, just the name implies a little, what you think about it, then maybe the trust is increasing and the people are accepting it even without already experiences. Another hypothesis I can fully support is seeing is believing. I can fully support this because also in another study what we did, we made before and after interviews with the test drivers that were part in it, and they really also normal people, let's call it like this, and not experts in technology or in whatever. Then they said, okay, it makes sense, yeah, simply. So an Austrian statement. So I think it is the one way is experience, and the second point would be trusting, and if we can support trust with traffic management activities, I would say that's the good approach, and we are good in traffic management in Europe. So despite, on the contrary to the US, they are not really so good in traffic management.
Yes, I think we need something like a master plan for Europe. We need a big picture for what do we want to reach in 10 years, in 5 years, and in 10 years. And I think it would be very, very helpful in that time to have competition, different companies who are offering services with autonomous driving vehicles. And there we would have so much advantages for our mobility system. And we discussed yesterday if it is possible, because it seems that Waymo and others are so have such a very, very high level of their technology. But we found 2 examples how Europe was able to bring good products on the market. So one was GPS and Galileo. Yeah, I know it needed a lot of time, but Galileo and GPS are two systems who are in operation. And the other one is Boeing and Airbus. And it was the same. Boeing was the leader of the world, and now Airbus is a little bit better, I think. And these are 2 European projects, and we have so much knowledge in Europe, so much great people who are working on the field of autonomous driving, who have an idea of mobility in the future. And I think it would be able to reach that goal if we have a plan, and if we are concentrating on the way to reach the goals, and if we have the market approach in mind. The costs are important, and the level of service we have to reach. Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks. I think that question of the Airbus idea is something we might come back to in a little bit. But firstly, apologies to Emily, who's had to wait quite a bit of time. But you've also got plenty of. Yeah, you've also heard quite a bit now about what people expect from the future. I think it's a good time to hear the voice of a European OEM.
Yeah, so as a co-moderator, I just wanted to ask a question about a topic that has been discussed very briefly so far. And my question to all of you is, how do you anticipate and how you plan to overcome in the short term the European safety homologation and regulatory approaches that may slow down the transition to real service compared to what is currently happening in the USA and in Japan, for instance? It has also been discussed a bit this morning. And also about what we call the cybersecurity challenges, and GDPR highlighting that authorities need to support the main actors to facilitate the deployment. But we agreed that technology is ready, more or less, but what about all the other things around that may complicate the real service to be deployed in a long-term perspective with authorities, notably?
On the, how do we on the short term deal with the regulatory stuff? First of all, multiple European countries have exemptions and ways of allowing some of the stuff that's on the road already, because none of that is type approved. And also, if I talk to the Norwegian road authorities, we have a trial law in Norway, and they say, sure, a trial can be 500 vehicles. We haven't defined the size of a trial. And it's like, okay, then we're good. Then we can have the legal people talk about definitions and do what they usually do and define the world the way we need it. Still needs to be safe and proven safe and all of those things. But I think it's also we need to get going doing it, and we need to deal with the things as we move along. Especially now, because we're in very much in danger of regulating stuff we don't know what is, that we have never seen, and we have no clue how is actually going to work. And also, if you start thinking through the people that are actually writing the text of regulation in Europe, how many of them have ridden with Waymo? I've asked the question, and the response wasn't very encouraging. So the true understanding of what technology can actually do and where it is and how we do it. But the practical answer, get vehicles on the road. We've been doing that since 2016, 17. And geez, you should see the question lists we got from the fire department first time we were going to do a shuttle on the road. So we deal with it. We answer the questions. We do the best we can. We educate people along the way. But we need to get moving.
I'm not sure if this is really the problem, because this year in Hamburg, Moja will start with a level 4 service with more than 100 vehicles. Okay, the first time with safety drivers, but they told you, next year, 2027, they will drive less. They will have a driverless operation. It seems to work. It's possible. And if the government of Hamburg and the government in Berlin and the Commission in Brussels are on the same opinion that we need that technology, we need that services, it should be possible. If we have some pilot project on this scale, I think this is the first important step who is done already.
Well, to answer your question on homologation and safety issues, we are working on that at Keolis. We are involved in a project that is funded by a French government, whose name is MAC2. And the goal of this project is to have a homologated platform able to do level 3 and then level 4 service by supposedly next year, but more probably the following one. And to provide service in the city of Châteauroux in France on open road, mixed traffic, and integrated in the public transport network. It's the same path as the main line of this network. So we are really working on that and believing that it's happening maybe not this year, yes, but in the coming 2 years. And to answer on the part on cybersecurity and GDPR, yes, it is a challenge. We are not the only one working as PTOs working on that. I think that most of the job has to be made by OEM and technology providers. But this is really a question because the French framework, regulatory framework, also has a testing part, which is working well. And for the deployment part, you need to be approved by, I don't know the English word for that, but qualified, agreed bodies that say, okay, you can go. And there are a few themes that you need to pass before you are able to deploy the service. And so far, the bodies have been named or approved for 6 out of the 7 themes, and the one missing is cybersecurity. So it's really a question that we are asking ourselves: how will we meet the needs, the requirements, but also who is going to say, okay, you're safe enough.
So the topic of safety and homologation, in every session I am, is a topic, and maybe I'm involved in a little bit in standardization, and this is a long-term story. For whatever reason, we can discuss offline. So they have, or we have, however you call it, a standardized workflow how to get to a standard and then to somehow to a directive. So the process is a long-lasting process, and I think that's the main criticism in all these sessions I heard. And yesterday there was also this topic with AI, the same story. So it's always the same story. It takes too long, it is complicated, and we are ready, and who is, but on the other hand, what you mentioned, it is always who is then saying, okay, it's safe enough, and what does it mean? And if you look into the functional safety evolvement of many issues, we had at some point of time always this paradigm shift. It was in the 90s when it started with embedded systems. Suddenly it was not purely hardware and mechanics anymore, it was software. So, and then people thought about how to do this, and then they issued a standard. And I think this is now the same approach. What is different 20 years ago, now we have not so much time anymore to discuss 10 years. And I think to make it more in a positive way, yeah, because it is always safety, and that's the horrible thing, and that is stopping us anywhere. On the other side, society wants top high-level safety everywhere. Yeah, so that is also, maybe it's also us, yeah, as we are all society. So we want the top safety, and you cannot grab it. Yeah, safety is not, it is an abstract thing. You just feel it when something happened past. Yeah, it happened, not it will happen, it happened. So therefore, maybe it's also us. So maybe that give to you, think about yourself and your requirements on safety, and if you maybe are really want to lower it or you want to have it higher, then you must also feel the consequences. So it's us.
Yeah, Andre.
The interesting part about that is then why do we allow people to drive on the roads? If we said we had a new system that we were going to introduce today, it's going to be a fantastic, flexible, whatever, something. It's called private cars, but by the way, we're going to kill 20,000 people a year. That's the price, or part of the price for the system. Would we ever deploy it? Unlikely. But basically, that's what we're aiming for on the tech side.
That's what happened at the beginning of automotive. You know, people were driving with horses, carriages, and then they were like, okay, what is this thing? So I think we also have to prove ourselves.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm getting the right message here, because there's been a lot of discussion, as we've said, the last couple of days about the regulation. So we're saying maybe regulation itself is, we can do what we need to do at the moment with that standardization. we can definitely work on. But cybersecurity is the kind of a big black spot that needs to be solved. Is that a fair?
Sorry, I stole the microphone again. These things, if I press the button, he loses the mic. So, yeah. Sorry. About the regulation and the homologation and all of that, that is designed for full-scale endgame. To be able to really, truly deploy that, you need the business case and the money and the investments and all of that. Homologation is a process that costs between 50 and 100 million euros to do on a vehicle. And if you're going to do that, you expect to sell tens of thousands of vehicles. How do we resolve those things? The process is not designed for some of these things. That's why we need some flexibility in some of those steps and ways to do exemptions and work our way there in different ways. If homologation is sort of the holy grail for everything and the complete final end approval for everything, we're not going to get anything done until we're, well, yeah, you can see where it leads.
Okay, I think this would be a good time to open the floor maybe. Who has got some questions for our speakers? Yes, we have a microphone at the back, just a second. If you can just quickly introduce yourself so that everyone can hear.
Yeah, thanks a lot for these many good points made on AV and especially in relation to public transport. I'm Ingrid Skogsmo. I work for the Swedish National Road Transport Research Institute, also co-leading Cluster 6 of the CCAM partnership. And I have ridden Waymo. So I was just intrigued by it seems to be a little bit of a holy grail, the Waymo. As long as we get the Waymos here, it will be fine. But I'm concerned about the cost of that thing. It is not for everywhere, and it is a cherry-picking exercise where it is deployed for a business perspective, I think. So I was just wondering, is there a critical mass of Waymos that would make it cost-effective or sort of permissible to have Waymos here in Europe?
If I can comment on that. It's becoming sort of it's not sounding so good anymore to say, well, ridden a Waymo as sort of the license to everything, so my apologies for coming back to them. I love their digital driver, the technology that drives. I don't want their service as a European. Ride-hailing with individuals is a different business model than what actually works in Europe. And to your point about scale, what kind of scale do we need? You need to get to most likely at least hundreds, if not thousands, of vehicles to make the upfront investments and the building of the service commercially viable. And you need a timeline for that for 10 plus years of operations. And yes, we have done the numbers.
But they are like $700,000 each.
Currently, right now, yes. If you can do a next generation Waymo driver in a seeker vehicle, I can get the volumes and I can do ride sharing. It's the volume and ride sharing that's going to bring the cost down to where I can live with it. And if I do that at scale, and then I'm talking thousands into the tens and hundreds of thousands over a decade or two, I can deliver it at about the same cost as per kilometer as the full cost of owning a private car. Then that's lower than ride-hailing and taxi.
Yeah, comparing to buses then?
Not fully at the bus level, it'd be about 0.6, 0.7 cents on a euro. Buses are more on 2, 3, 4.
Wondering, Uwe, if, because you mentioned the cost issue as well in your...
Yeah, because it's one of the most important points for introducing that new technology. Concerning Waymo, I think they started with the first pilot. They decided to choose that service, like it's in ride-hailing. It's because they started with the service in Phoenix and in LA and San Francisco. In Europe, I think they need other ideas for that technology. The price of Waymo is about 10% cheaper than Uber. This was the idea, because they want to bring people into their cars, into their vehicles, to show, hey, our service works, it is safe, it's a good product. This was the main idea, not to earn too much money or to it's not a business model. And in this phase, I think they have a long-term strategy, but I do not know that strategy. Maybe you know it, but me, they didn't told that. I compare Waymo, or the technology from Waymo, with our car sharing systems for example, in Weimar. And for me, I do not have an own car. Weimar has 70,000 inhabitants. I do not need a car because I live in Weimar, I work in Weimar. I drive by bicycle, I use car sharing, I use sometimes bus and German rail. And car sharing costs about 8-9 euros per trip when I use it. It's more expensive than when I would use our bus. If we have the Deutschland ticket, the German ticket, it's very, very cheap. And car sharing for one trip is more expensive than traveling by bus if I have that abo. But for me, car sharing is a good solution because from my specific situation, and though I think services on the basis of the technology of Waymo or others will find several solutions for the whole mobility, inside the whole mobility concept. And for me, it is not a service who will, it isn't service additional or integrated into our mobility service with buses and trains and so. And so we have enough possibilities for using them. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Uwe. So I think we have time. I think we can take one more question because I want to make sure we have enough time to wrap up. So sorry, I think somebody already has the mic, but our speakers, I think, are going to be around after the session, so there's going to be time to have follow-up discussions. Sorry.
In the last few days, I've heard a few references here about Waymo, presented as a success story. And, I would like to challenge that because, in the last few months, there were many articles in business media in the US, Forbes, Bloomberg, all of them, Wall Street Journal, that it's a very problematic model. There isn't a return on investment. Each Waymo vehicle cost $150,000 if you take the cost of the Hyundai and on top of it $100,000 of hardware, and on top of it they need in some cases remote monitoring, meaning remote driving. So it was calculated that the overall cost of operation for them, it's like 3 years return on investment, and it doesn't save anything in terms of taking other cars off the road or solving the drivers shortage problem in public transportation, and it's only 1 or 2 people at a time. And on top of it, I think that this morning Tesla published that they will postpone by a few months their big launch of the level 4, meaning the driverless autonomous driving, meaning they already started the one without with the remote driving, and that's going to wipe out completely Waymo, because for $40,000 you can get robotaxi, and on top of it, the innovation here, which is what we need in Europe, is in the business model, because the model that Tesla are planning is that while you sleep or while you walk at home at Weimar, your vehicle would work for you, your Tesla, and will generate passive income. And there is only a line, by now, there is a queue of 25,000 Americans that already registered themselves for that pilot when it will start with Tesla, because they wanted their vehicle to generate passive. So I think that we should switch gears and start talking about public transportation,
Yeah,
like
so
shuttles.
the question
and
is on the viability or the appropriateness of the.
Yeah, I think that this discussion should be about shuttles and buses and not about robotaxis, because that's where the economical model lies. This is what solves public transportation systems for cities in solving, urbanization, aging, the financial model, some of the numbers that were mentioned here. It makes much more sense than comparing to Waymo.
Let's pass it to Clementine and to Andreas.
Quickly, that's why I want their technology, not their service. I want the ride sharing and it deployed in a different model. And for the Teslas, if we do that in Europe, we're going to double and triple traffic. In all of our analysis, that is the worst case scenario where you have a privately owned autonomous vehicle doing stuff on its own or driving around empty. That's a disaster. And we have done the simulations in multiple locations. We should not go for that model in Europe. Thank you.
Clementine?
Yes, I want to give the floor to Jane, maybe. She's from the USA, and maybe she has something interesting to say.
Can we get a mic for...
While the mic is coming, I think that Tesla its technology is based only on cameras, and I'm really skeptical about this working correctly with no LiDARs at all. So this is my first point. Then about the scaling up, this answers also Mrs. Question. I think that the more vehicles we have when we buy a fleet, then we can have scale opportunities for reducing the costs. And also when we have a fleet, we reduce the cost of the remote management because we can have remote managers for a fleet and not for one for each vehicle. So.
Thank you. I'm Jane Lappin. I'm from the USA. I'm retired from Toyota Research Institute, where I worked on the automated vehicles project, and before that for the US DOT in AV policy research. And I agree with your point, but I want to add to it that the companies are pursuing business models that will enable them to repay their investors sooner than later, so that they continue to receive investments and are able to continue to develop the technology and expand their business model. So when you look at a company like Tesla or Waymo or Zoox, previously Cruise, Wave outside, what you want to be looking at is the quality of their stack. How well is the robot operating the vehicle? Because it's agnostic on the platform. The platform is the business strategy. The critical component is the stack, the robot that operates the vehicle. Going forward, we have yet to discover the costs of maintenance, the kinds of issues that are going to emerge through maintenance, the kinds of liability. You're taking a big financial risk investing in a transit fleet right now and projecting your costs forward for maintenance. But okay, if your authority has the stomach for that risk, it's somebody has to do it. So that was the one thing I wanted to add about the technology. They're not all equal. They're absolutely not all equal. And it's the stack you want to keep your eyes on.
Thanks, Jane. So I think we're going to have to move on a bit, but I think there's plenty of scope for further discussion there. But I think the message is.
You mentioned something about if you dive into technology and about radar, LiDAR versus camera only. I just want to mention, just again, if we are talking about Europe versus US, right? That's what we are trying to do. And Tesla and I'm not representing Tesla. I'm just reflecting as I live in the US and so on. Tesla, they ended 2024. I think that everyone hears Tesla ended 2024 with 1.5 billion autonomous miles driven. And there are almost 500,000 Americans paying $99 per month to them for driving FSD in terms of the success of the model. So how can we challenge here? How can we dare to challenge here their vision-only technology? I think that that's strange.
Well, I don't think we could have an entire conference, I think, just on this. So we'll park it for a moment. But I think what I want to make sure we get out of the discussion is that this isn't presenting a vision that what has been used in the US as a business model or as service types translate to Europe. I think what Endre said is quite clear, that a vision of having the technology that L4 can be used in public transport in the ways that is needed in Europe in terms of the services that we want to deploy here. I hope there's fairly broad agreement that that's where we're aiming for. But we do need to wrap up. But I want to give our speakers maybe a minute, 2 minutes max, your final kind of key takeaways or your key messages to those in the room, to OEMs, to policymakers, to anybody else. What's on the wish list, and then a chance for Emily at the end to respond maybe as well. Uwe, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I would like to see the OEMs continue to invest in this large and important market, because I think in 5 or in 10 years, we will have that different business models, business mobility concepts with autonomous driving. And I hope that this is based on a European technology and not only on a technology by China and US and other countries. I hope that. And I think we need, therefore, a strategy. We need, therefore, a cooperation between industry, OEMs especially, and all the different developers of that technology and concepts. And we should take the view on the business models and the costs and the reinvestment of the costs. Yeah.
Thomas.
Maybe I make a more general remark, or give it to you. Also, as a summary somehow of the last 2 or 3 days and a lot of discussions, it looks like to me that we must be more relaxed, not in terms of it is not valid to discuss it, but not to be so aggressive and then pushing and always fingerprinting, pointing and saying, you're the problem and it's the OM and it's the regulation and it's that and that. We need each other, as I said before, it was the society. So it's us that want to have it, so it's on us to make it possible. And that is my key message. Yeah? And I'm myself a rather relaxed person, so I would also recommend it to you. It makes life easier and it increases life quality. And that's somehow also what I would recommend in this business. And then we make a big step forward. The second message is, don't frighten you to death. Yeah, it's always in China and USA and everyone is overtaking us, and in Europe we are lost and so on. No, we are still good, but we must be better.
A very optimistic and a very holistic view. So thanks for that. Clementine.
Yes, I kind of prepared my answer, so I will deliver it quite quickly. You asked us what we expected from both OEMs and also policymakers. So from OEMs, I think we want availability of solutions and also their reliability. Because when I try to operate a system and it fails every 2 days, then I cannot provide service. We need the safety requirements to be met, and also the cost to be reduced, because today an autonomous vehicle is the cost is like 3 or 4 times more expensive than regular vehicles, and this we cannot operate. We need to reduce the number of operators by 10 if we want to make up on the cost of the sole vehicle and its stack and stuff like that. We also need wider ODDs because this is, if we want to make service only for cities, well, fine, good. But I think we also need to address other parts of the countries and like countryside and more dense areas. This is very important. And also bad weather conditions like snow and really high temperatures. We need also speed and capacity. We need vehicles that don't only fit 2, 3, 4 person. We need more capacity vehicles. And also interoperability with standards, for example, APIs. When we want to have one vehicle from one OEM and another from another, and then it's really difficult to make them communicate, and it's difficult for us PTOs to operate. And we know that we have a lot of different kinds of vehicles in our fleets. And from policymakers, I think that what we really need as PTOs is to be heard. And I know that it's easier to listen to the voices of the lobbies from, for example, automotive industries, because they are here and they speak really loudly. But please invite PTOs to your table when you are discussing regulation and so on, when you are preparing the calls for I'm sorry, I'm losing my words, subsidies and stuff like that, because we also need to be part of this. I showed the circle. It's not only about technology, it's a service that we all need to provide together. And we also need deployment and homologation to be facilitated. We know that there is a bar we need to reach, but we need also help to reach this. Subsidize wisely, please. And also, it's very important to gather the common knowledge from the past projects and from the projects coming, because there is a lot of knowledge that is being produced. So we need to take the best out of this. And finally, take the whole ecosystem into account. Thanks.
Four points. First two, I think Europe needs a dual strategy. One is to build and boost the automotive sector and the OEMs, already ongoing with action plans and a lot of good stuff going on in that space. And we need all of those players, and we need all of them to develop the stuff we don't have. In parallel to that, we also need to start deploying. And we should seriously look at how can we, until we have European technology, use whatever else the world can provide us, so that we can also address driver shortage, climate change, traffic issues, all of that. We need a dual strategy for that. And there can be different tools and toolkits for those two things. And it needs all the players in all the fields in both of those strategies. On the regulatory specifics, I'd strongly encourage to reflect and think about two very concrete key items. Fleets of autonomous vehicles should be regulated or put into the space of public transit and seen as part of that from a regulatory perspective. That would give them a place in the system. It would allow for local variations and the diversity of the Europe structure to actually deploy and work with it. Second half of that, have a very strong look at how to regulate privately owned level 4 vehicles driving empty. When you get to a situation where, to use the Tesla example, the Tesla can drive you to work and then drive back home, so to speak, the last half of that journey provides no societal value at all. It just adds traffic to roads. Think very thoroughly on how to either regulate strongly or straight out ban that. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Before we close, Emily, you have been taking copious notes of everything that's been going on there. That's good. And yeah, I think it's only fair that as our OEM on the panel, you get a chance to react to what you've heard.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Indeed, I took a lot of notes, and it was very interesting to attend this panel as an OEM with PTOs and more researchers with great experience on automated mobility solutions. So what I can just emphasize is that Andre said, tech is very important, but most of this is services. It is of paramount importance to bring services, I speak more for public transport, to users to gain user acceptance. Then, referring what you said, Clementine, I can just support you for everything you said about the need for PTOs to have OEMs, of course, with tech development that is reliable and viable. And where we are also expected as OEMs is to support you by bringing new business models with a long-term perspective. And it is often what it is difficult between public institutions and private companies to be aligned on a long-term perspective, where we have, of course, different strategies. So what I can say is that as business model, what I would like to offer, where we are working on, is to work on new business models such as integration, the progress of technology to decrease the cost of tech elements, for instance, such as the set of sensors, LiDARs, cameras, which are very expensive, but as we go along, as the technology advances, those tech elements should be cheaper and then decrease the cost of the shuttles. So this is the first option. And also to make economies of scale by deploying, sorry to say that, but it has also been said this morning, more vehicles we deploy, better is the price. That is to say, economies of scale will also come with the number of vehicles increasing in the deployment. Yes, and concerning the wider oddities, I totally agree, and this is also the reason why we should, unfortunately, in the short term, really go on going in funded projects, because it is a good way to work on rural zone, urban zones with very different use cases, bad weather conditions, speed, where we can see that PTOs have very different requirements and needs, and also work on interoperability for mixed fleet vehicles. This is precisely what we are also doing in the ULTIMO project. So it was my last word. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Thank you to all our speakers. It's been super interesting discussion. Thanks for the questions, for your participation. I know we've only grazed the surface of some of this stuff, but what I'm taking away is there is both enthusiasm to get this right in Europe, a kind of a clear vision for how it might work and for what it can do for public transport. And I hope when we're back at UCAD in a couple of years' time, we'll have some better success stories or more success stories to share as well. So thanks, everybody. Thanks to the organizers, and we'll finish there.